Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Everyone agrees we have serious economic problems in America today, specifically unemployment and slow economic growth. By all indicators, it's a lack of demand caused by consumer debt and depressed housing prices which is keeping our economy down. Unfortunately, the majority believes, based on faith and ideology alone, certainly not on any evidence, that the reasons for our slow growth and high unemployment are government spending and government overregulation. Despite the fact that there is absolutely no evidence that overregulation is the cause of our current economic woes, stopping regulation is the solution proposed by the majority today. Not only would this have no impact on economic or job growth, but it would put public safety, health, and the environment at risk. This bill would force agency rulemaking to grind to a halt by putting up numerous additional procedural requirements before rules could be promulgated. These requirements are unnecessary roadblocks designed not to add any real analysis or due process, but simply to delay or block rulemaking. For example, the bill would expand the use of cost-benefit analysis to all rules, not just economically significant ones, and require an analysis of all alternatives to the proposed final rule. What sense does it make to require an in-depth analysis of every single possible alternative? And this requirement is written so as to override provisions in other statutes, such as the Clean Air Act, that prohibit agencies from considering costs when acting to protect public health or safety. Not surprisingly, groups who care about protecting public health, safety, and the environment, such as the Natural Resource Defense Council, Public Citizen, Defenders of Wildlife, and so forth, oppose this bill. We can't risk our health and well-being to the far-right ideology that motivates this bill. One area in which I'm especially concerned that the collateral damage of this bill could cause great harm is nuclear power. It is beyond obvious that problems in a nuclear power plant could be catastrophic. We've seen that. Accidents, natural disasters, and terrorist attacks all could cause unspeakable horrors wherever we have a nuclear power plant. Just last year, we saw at the Fukushima plant in Japan what can happen when a nuclear power plant gets hit by an earthquake or a tsunami and for whatever reason suffers a power failure. And it was just a few months ago that a nuclear power plant in Virginia had to go offline when we had an earthquake here. My district lies just less than 40 miles from an old nuclear power plant at Indian Point in New York. There are 20 million people living within a 50-mile radius around the plant. The 50-mile radius being used by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission as the basis for the evacuation zone recommended after the Fukushima disaster. Indian Point also sits near two fault lines, and according to the NRC is the most likely nuclear power plant in the country to experience core damage due to an earthquake. I have serious concerns about the safety risks posed by Indian Point and by nuclear power more generally. If we are going to have nuclear power, we must reduce the risk of catastrophe as much as possible by strengthening safety standards. That is why I'm a co-sponsor of H.R. 1242, the Nuclear Power Plant Safety Act of 2011, which would accomplish this goal. Among other changes, it would require the NRC to impose rules requiring plants to upgrade to withstand severe events like earthquakes and to have enough backup power so as to avoid a meltdown for a significant length of time. As someone who recognizes that we need new, more stringent requirements for nuclear power plants, I cannot imagine why we would want to make rulemaking concerning nuclear plants more difficult. And yet that is what this bill would do. In order to protect public health, safety, and the environment, and to ensure that the NRC can act when necessary, this amendment would exempt actions taken by the NRC under the Atomic Energy Act from this bill. By exempting rules concerning nuclear power plant operations, my amendment would preserve the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's ability to impose real safety standards before a catastrophic accident. Such standards may one day serve to prevent a nuclear catastrophe. They may be needed steps to avoid millions of lives lost and miles of uninhabitable land and water. I would hope that my colleagues would agree that nuclear power plants are at least one area where we should be strengthening, not weakening, safety standards. One area where we should not be tying the hands of the regulatory agency, in this case the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, from imposing regulatory standards that protect the public health and safety. I ask all members to support my amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.